Hello everyone, today I'm going to be making the Nigerian chicken pie. I've actually made a video of the Nigerian meat pie a little over a year ago, and the pastry used for both the Nigerian meat pie and the chicken pie is actually the same, but I'm repeating it once again so I can show you a detailed recipe and I can answer most of your questions. So I'm going to start by making my chicken pie filling, and I'm going to be using my freshly ground chicken for this, together with some diced potatoes, diced carrots, and some spices. So in a pan, I'm going to be preheating some oil, and when the oil is hot, I'll be adding some diced onions, and I'm going to be frying these onions until they become translucent. So I ended up browning my onions, which you don't have to do, but that is still okay, we can still use it. At this point, I'm going to be adding the ground chicken, and I'll be cooking it until it's no longer pink. Then I'm going to be adding 1 seasoning cube, black pepper, chili powder, curry powder, and salt to taste. And I'm going to give this a thorough mix so that all these ingredients can be well combined. It's now time to add the diced potatoes, the carrots, together with some water that is going to be sufficient to cook the vegetables until it's really tender. Stir this together and cover it up and leave it to cook until the vegetables become really tender. You can check how tender the vegetables are by crushing them with the back of a fork. If it breaks very easily, then it's done. If otherwise, you have to cook it a little bit more. For me, this is done to my taste. The next thing to do now is to prepare our water and flour mixture. This is done by adding 2 tablespoons of flour together with half of a cup of water. Mix it together thoroughly until the flour is totally dissolved in the water. And this is going to be used to thicken the filling. And it's also going to allow the filling to remain moist during the baking process and even after the baking process. I will now be pouring this mixture into the filling. Mix it together and leave it to cook for about a minute or even less, then take it off the heat. It's now time to prepare the chicken pie pastry, and here I've got my all-purpose flour, and to that I'm going to be adding the baking powder, a little bit of nutmeg, which is totally optional, and a tiny pinch of salt. Now mix this together to combine all the dry ingredients. At this point, I'm going to be adding the fat, and I'm using a combination of very cold margarine together with butter in a 50-50 ratio. Now use your hands to massage the fat into the flour until it becomes crumbly. You can definitely use margarine alone. In that case, you will need to reduce the quantity of margarine to the flour ratio because of its oily tendencies. On the other hand, if you choose to use butter alone, you have to increase the quantity of the butter, but be ready to have a super rich and crumbly pie, just like the American pie. I hope I'm clear on this point. Now let's move on. I will now be adding a very cold water to this, a little at a time, making sure the water is worked into the flour before the next addition, until a slightly stiff but workable dough is formed. Now work this dough for about a minute or so, but make sure it's not overworked so you don't end up with a very hard pie. Once that is done, I'm going to be wrapping this up with a plastic wrap, and I'm going to be placing it in the fridge to chill for about 20 minutes or even more. And this is going to help your pie to have a delicate crust, and that is what we want in our pies. The pastry dough has been chilling for about 20 minutes now in the fridge, but before I take it out, I'm going to prepare my pan. You can line your baking pan with a parchment paper, or simply line it with a foil paper facing the dull side towards yourself. Then grease the foil with some butter and set it aside. The dough is just out from the fridge, and I'm going to be transferring it to my work surface. I'll take out the quantity I want to work with at a time. Sprinkle the work surface with some flour. And I'm going to roll out the dough onto my desired thickness. I don't want to be specific about the thickness of this pie at this point, because I know some people prefer it so thin while others prefer it a bit thick. So I think it's your choice at this point to roll it out to your desired thickness. Once this is well rolled out, use a knife to trim the edges. You want something fairly straight, you don't have to be perfect about this. Then cut out the pastry into rectangles of your desired size. You can make it of a mini size or a maxi size, it's totally dependent on you. At this point, I'm going to quickly crack one egg into a bowl and whisk it together. Then I will set it aside for later use. Take the cut out dough pastry one at a time. Fill it up with a chicken filling, but make sure you don't overfill this so that you'll be able to close the pie very well. Now use a pastry brush or even your finger to brush the egg around the edges of the pastry dough. Then close up the pie and crimp the edges using a fork. Once the pie is well sealed, gently pick it up and place it inside the greased pan. The next thing to do is to brush the surface of the pie with the remaining whisked egg. And doing this will make the meat pie appear golden brown once it's baked. Finally, before taking this to the oven, I'm going to use a fork to prick the surface of these pies just to make them beautiful and to create a breathing space for the filling. It's now time for the pies to go into the oven, and I'll be popping them in a 350 degrees preheated oven. And I'm going to be leaving them to cook for about 20 minutes or even a little more, depending on how browned you want the surface of your pies to be. And here is the final outcome. Do I really need to give a description of how the pie looks or tastes? I don't think so. I think the pie speaks for themselves. Thank you all for joining me again today, and don't forget to click the subscribe button just in case you haven't done that already. Until next time, I'll talk to you shortly. Enjoy.